Hey, my friend, and welcome to Aligned to Rise, the podcast for ambitious women who are ready to rise above their symptoms, release old limitations, and fully rise into their true power and potential. I'm your host, Alyssa Chavez, functional nutritionist, performance coach, and former endo and infertility warrior who knows what it's like to feel held back by your body and your beliefs. I've taken a journey of true healing from the inside out so that I can show up feeling great in my body, confident and unstoppable. And now I'm here to help you do the same. Through a blend of functional nutrition and deep mindset work, this show will empower you to reclaim your vitality, trust your intuition, and live unapologetically in your purpose. If you're ready to align your body, mind, and spirit so you can rise to your highest potential, you're in the right place. Let's rise, my friend. This show was created for educational purposes only and should not be used as a replacement for medical advice or treatment. Hey, my friend, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy that you're here to join me today, and I am very excited to talk about this topic that I have planned for you all today. I think it's one of those conversations that's just that I feel like I don't really hear very often, and I feel like it needs to be talked about a little bit more. So just to catch you up, if you haven't caught the latest episodes of the podcast here, I am currently, at the time I'm recording this, am 16 weeks pregnant with my little girl after an 8-year-long fertility journey, including IVF and pregnancy loss and all of the things. I am going to be talking about all of those topics in today's episode: infertility and IVF and miscarriage and all of the things. So please do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If you feel like this is not a conversation you are ready to hear about, please feel free to just pause this episode and come back to it at a later time. Take care of yourself the way that you need to. However, if it may help you out along the way, along your own journey, to hear somebody else's story, definitely listen in. Or if there's somebody you know who could really benefit from this episode, definitely give it a share. So what I really would like to share on today's episode, I shared a few episodes ago just my whole infertility journey, what that looked like, and how I was able to conceive naturally at age 36 after an 8-year infertility journey with endometriosis. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of that again today. But what I did want to do is open up about just what it's been like navigating pregnancy after miscarriage and years of infertility. What I've learned through this journey so far, what's been hard, tools that I've used to support myself, because so many women walk this road, and men as well. Goodness knows all of these things affect men as well as women. And I know that it's so easy just to feel alone in your journey. So my intention with this episode is just to offer you some companionship, some hope, and some thoughts on how I'm navigating all of this. Now, if you're not currently pregnant after a loss, but maybe you're still on your infertility journey, this episode absolutely is for you as well, because a lot of what I'm talking about as far as how I've been supporting myself along the way can be very helpful if you're on your infertility journey or if you are currently navigating a pregnancy after a loss. So I wanted to start by digging in to share a little bit about my infertility journey. Like I said, I'm not going to go through the whole story again because I just did that a few episodes back. But I did need to bring a little bit of context into today's conversation just so you have an understanding of kind of where this is all coming from. So back in 2020, my husband and I, we had already been struggling for several years to conceive and decided to go ahead and move forward with IVF at that time. And so we did an egg retrieval. We did 2 transfers through the course of that year. The first one was a failed transfer. The second one ended in a miscarriage. And truthfully, it was one of the most challenging experiences of my life. I knew that miscarriage was common. I'd known so many women who had experienced it before, and what I did not understand was the depth of the emotion that comes along with that. And so on a day-to-day basis, there was a lot of grief there. I mean, I cried daily. As I shared on that previous episode, I would take my shower in the morning, and then I would just sit down in my closet and just cry for as long as I needed to before I was ready to get on with my day. And that's kind of how I navigated it at that point in time. So it was definitely a low point for me on my journey, but the beauty that came out of that is that it was also really the catalyst for my journey into healing and nutrition, as well as the deep emotional work that I have been learning about as well. But there was definitely a solid 5-year gap between those times, between having that miscarriage in 2020 and then conceiving now in 2025. There was a 5-year journey in between those 2 points. And there was a lot going on emotionally during that time, that is for sure. So I definitely had some very low points along the way. There was a journey of being, I would say, even in a depression sort of state where I was just feeling very low emotionally on a regular basis. I would do my best to kind of pick myself up and get on with my day. But if I'm perfectly honest, I was pretty low, pretty devastated. There was a lot of grief happening. And of course, at the same time, there was financial stuff going on because of COVID and just a lot of other layers happening at the same time. And at first, I think I was just really stuck in, I don't know, blaming my circumstances, I guess, as to the way that I was feeling. The more that I'm learning now, or I would say relearning, because this is all stuff that I learned many, many years ago, but it's one of those lessons that maybe we just need to learn again and again in our lives, or apparently I do at least, that at the end of the day, we're really responsible for our own emotional state. So along the way, of course, being in my late 20s, early 30s during this time frame, I had a lot of friends and family members and everybody in between, it seemed like, who was getting pregnant, having babies, watching their kids grow up. And there's a lot of challenge with that, honestly. Even landmarks like Mother's Day or the anniversary of having that miscarriage and all of the things in between, there was a lot of ups and downs along with that. And I actually really remember having a particular moment. My sister had announced her pregnancy. This was a few years back. She has a 2-year-old now, I absolutely adore. He's just the sweetest and cutest kid. But at the time that she announced her pregnancy, which would have been closer to 3 years ago now, I had just the hardest time with that. She let the whole family know, and as much, I was so dying to just be happy for her, because at the end of the day, there was a new little member of our family that was coming along, and I wanted so badly to be there and be a supportive sister and all the things. But if I'm perfectly honest, what I really felt was sorry for myself. I was feeling the grief. I was feeling sadness. I was feeling like I was just missing out on so many things. And honestly, it was really a turning point for me, though, emotionally, because where many other people in my life, friends and other people who I maybe wasn't as close with, I could kind of, in a way, just take a little step aside, maybe not be as much a part of that whole process with pregnancy and the, baby shower. I turned down many baby showers during that time, just wasn't feeling up to it. But this was my sister. This is my nephew that was coming into the world. And I just didn't feel good about approaching it the same way. I wanted to be there. I wanted to show up. And so that was really, for me, the start of wanting to make some changes to the way that I was handling things mentally and emotionally. Because I wanted to be a more present sister and aunt and be able to really enjoy and experience this. So there were some challenges with that. I will not say that was a perfect process, but I will say it was really a turning point for me. And at the end of the day, me working on shifting my emotions and my mental state, I shared this also a couple of episodes ago when I was talking about just all of the shifts that I've made throughout the year in order to get to the point of being able to conceive naturally. But what I really wanted to talk about today more than anything is what the journey has been like through this actual pregnancy. How have I navigated this? What has this been like for me? So I first got a positive pregnancy test in July of 2025. And that alone was really a whirlwind of emotions because in the 5 years since having that miscarriage, I have not had a single positive pregnancy test. In fact, I haven't even taken hardly any because I created some boundaries for myself on that because I realized that just taking a test every month was not making me feel great emotionally. So I stopped doing that. Plus, they get expensive, when you're just buying pregnancy tests all the time. And so but I knew that I was a few days late for my cycle, and I just had a feeling, I suppose. So I took a test, immediately saw that positive result, and immediately there was such a mix of emotions. And this is where I realize how much if we allow it to, our past can influence our present. Because whereas, actually younger, naive Alyssa might have seen a positive pregnancy test, maybe if this was early on in my journey of trying to conceive, and I just saw a positive pregnancy test, it probably would have been largely joy and excitement, maybe some fear around just, am I ready to be a mom and all of that, but I probably would have leaned more towards just assuming that this was going to work out and I was going to end up with a healthy baby at the end of the journey. However, when you've had the history that I've had along the way, you don't just assume that a positive pregnancy test leads to a happy and healthy baby at the end of the journey. And there's some challenges to that. So I definitely felt some joy and excitement on seeing that test. There were some happy tears for sure, but there was also that lingering fear and hesitation that went along with that. It was just stuff coming up around, I unfortunately was having thoughts coming into my mind like, well, how long is this one going to last? And it's challenging to navigate that. It's challenging to enjoy a pregnancy while you're also afraid that it might come to an end at any moment. There is some real challenge with that. I will say that right from the get-go, just something about this pregnancy has felt different. It's hard to say exactly what that means. Definitely there's some physical differences because I am not through this pregnancy on any sort of medication or synthetic hormones or any of the things that I was put on while going through IVF back at the 5 years ago. So, it's more my natural body and hormones doing all the things. And I would say it was one of those, I had a gut feeling from the get-go that this was going to be our little miracle. But that doesn't mean that fear didn't come up. So just to share a few of the stories that have come up for me, and maybe some of you can resonate with some of this. But for example, in early pregnancy, especially those first few weeks after getting that positive pregnancy test, I was still having some light spotting, a little bit of cramping here and there. And of course, for me, back when I did have that miscarriage, those were some of the first signs that I had. And so it was so easy for my brain to just want to jump to fear, just almost crippling fear the moment I saw just the tiniest amount of blood when I went to the bathroom. And there was nothing unusual. There was no large amount of blood. It was nothing out of the ordinary. But just because of where I was coming from, I found myself falling into fear. And then even for me, my husband and I decided to go in for an early ultrasound at 7 weeks just to make sure that everything was okay because, we just wanted to be extra cautious and be able to kind of get a more clear date of when baby's due and all of that as well. But we ended up which I don't know. Was this the best idea? I don't know. But this is what we did. We ended up going back to the same ultrasound facility where we had gone back in 2020 to get an ultrasound to confirm that we were having a miscarriage. So I had started bleeding and having a little bit of cramping, and I had called my midwife, and she said, hey, I think maybe you should go and get an ultrasound and see what's going on. So we did and received the unfortunate news at that point in time. And so now we're going in with this new miracle pregnancy, and we went back to the same ultrasound facility. And so both of us are we hadn't been back in that building since then, and both of us are having a little bit of fear and trepidation around that. And what do you know? The couple that goes into the room right before us comes out with tears on their face, clearly having gotten bad news in their ultrasound. And my husband and I just grabbed each other's hands and held on for dear life. And I really questioned for a moment, should I even be doing this? Is this the right place? Is this the right, way to navigate this? But what we decided, even while we were on our drive on the way over there, we decided, you know what, we're just going to make new memories. We could choose to forever connect that particular ultrasound facility with getting bad news, and we could just keep that as a little trigger for us for the rest of our lives, or we could just create new associations and new memories. And now since then, we've now been back for multiple ultrasounds since then and have had very positive experience. They're super nice there, as they had been the first time as well. And we've had wonderful experiences. We've gotten to see baby grow and move and all of the things, which has been really cool. And I'm honestly, at the end of the day, I'm glad that we did that, because at the end of the day, would it really make a difference which ultrasound place we went to? Would that change the outcome? Probably not. But what I did want to change was my experience, my emotional experience behind it is really what I wanted to shift and change. And so that's where we decided to, make different choices for ourselves. So coming back to just how I've been navigating all of this, one of the main things that I would say I've been doing is, well, it's kind of a two-part thing. And these two things may sound like they contradict each other, but truthfully, it's been really important for me to do both of these things. So the first half of that is giving myself grace, because there definitely have been feelings of both grief, because at the end of the day, yes, I'm thrilled to be pregnant again and be able to welcome this new little life into the world. But at the end of the day, it's never going to replace that beautiful little baby that I lost years ago. It's not. There's no replacing one child with another. And so that grief of that pregnancy that I lost is still there. And there's also that anxiety coming up of just every little symptom. Oh my gosh, is everything okay? Or, immediately after getting an ultrasound, I would feel really good and happy because I saw everything being healthy. But then a week or so would go by and I would start to worry again because it had been a while. And of course, in early pregnancy, you don't feel baby move or anything yet. So there's typically not any overt signs other than just some shifts and changes happening in your body. And so one of the things that I've been working on is first of all, just giving myself grace, noticing when I'm feeling these things come up, this anxiety or grief or sadness or any of the things that I feel coming up, noticing that and giving myself grace to know that that's okay. And the other half of that, which, like I said, may sound a little conflicting, is to remind myself of everything that's going well. Because it's so easy to focus on the things that not even aren't going well, but potentially aren't going well. At the end of the day, what I was really doing was creating a problem that wasn't actually a problem. It had been a problem in the past, sure, but was it actually a problem right now in the present moment? No. So, for example, I wanted to share a little story that really relates to this. So, I was at an event recently with a group of people, and on one of the days of this event, we went out for a group hike to this beautiful lake and just had a lovely little, half-day adventure. And it was so nice. And when we got there, most of us had kind of carpooled, but there were a couple of people who were coming from a different direction. And when they got there, they were kind of laughing because they just hadn't really planned ahead for how much gas they needed. And of course, sometimes when you drive out to these hiking trails, it's a little remote. There's not a lot of resources in that immediate area. So basically, they had enough to get there, but they weren't 100% sure if they actually had enough gas to get back down the mountain and to a gas station. And so as we started to leave the lake and head back down this hiking trail back towards the parking lot, they kind of jumped ahead a little bit and just basically said, hey, we're just going to get a head start down. We want to just make sure that we can go and get gas. And if for some reason, things don't go well, there will be people behind us at least that can help us out. And so they took off. And it was so interesting because in the meantime, there was so much talk about this. It was a very kind and loving group that I was with. And so people were worried about them, wanting to make sure they were safe. So they were like, guys, we should hurry our way down this hike so that we can make sure that we get back to help these people. They're probably stuck at the bottom of the hill. They probably ran out of gas, and we're going to need to go and pick them up and then drive them to go and get some gas and then bring them back to the car. And that's going to take this much time. And so we should all get a head start. And there was just all this chatter, all this worry about this situation. And at the end of the day, we talked about it afterwards. Everybody, by the way, ended up getting back just fine. They did not run out of gas. They ended up getting back to a gas station and were able to fill up without just running out along the way, which was fantastic. But along the way, really what we did was we created a problem where there wasn't one. Was it a possibility? Sure. But was it an actual problem in that moment? Did we know for a fact that they were going to break down? No. It was a hypothetical, and we all spent so much time worrying about this potential outcome that we really missed enjoying the beauty of the hike on the way down, honestly, and just missed out on this experience because we were worried about what might be happening in the future. And it was such a beautiful metaphor because I was already pregnant at this time. I was about 8 or 9 weeks, so still fairly early. And it was such a beautiful metaphor for me to recognize gosh, this is kind of exactly what I'm doing in my own life here. I'm taking something that is a potential possibility, and I'm turning that into just this constant worry to where I'm not enjoying the journey. And at the end of the day, truly, this pregnancy is a miracle. I at this point really believe that every pregnancy is a miracle. But are you kidding me? After an 8-year journey with infertility, we were truly at the point where we were basically thinking we're either going to have to start to shift gears and maybe look into adoption or alternate options, or we just are going to learn to enjoy our lives together as a couple and not be parents. I mean, that's kind of where we were in our journey. And then all of a sudden we get this positive pregnancy test. So I fully believe that this is just a miracle that's happening right here. But at the same time, I wasn't allowing myself to really enjoy it. I was so stuck in that anxiety and fear state that I wasn't actually enjoying it. So I actually made a decision to simply enjoy the day that I was in, not even necessarily focused too much on the future of the pregnancy. Of course, I've spent some time picturing what this little girl is going to turn out to look like and be like and all of the things. But at the end of the day, I really was just doing my best, and I'm continuing to do my best to just enjoy this one day at a time, noticing the changes in my body, noticing my belly starting to grow, this little bump starting to happen, all the things. And I feel like I've learned so much from that experience, because at the end of the day, that right there, that's life. That's life right there. This is what we all do all day, every day. We take our past experiences and emotions that we've experienced before, especially if they're negative emotions that we would like to avoid, and we find ways to basically do everything that we can to avoid experiencing those negative emotions at the cost of being able to experience some of the really positive emotions like joy and excitement and gratitude. And there's so many examples of that, right? Like, I think a perfect metaphor also is if you've been in a relationship in the past that didn't go well for one reason or another. Maybe there was some sort of abuse involved, or maybe it just was a rocky relationship, or just something that just didn't go great. Maybe you were cheated on. Maybe the other person in the relationship was just kind of not very nice and manipulative or whatever. There's so many versions, so many stories. But what happens is we take all of that baggage with us and we go into a new relationship that might just be the best relationship of our life. Maybe it's a super nice partner who takes good care of us and does all the things. But instead of falling right into that and experiencing that gratitude and joy and love, what do? We hold back out of fear of getting hurt again. And that's exactly what I was doing in this pregnancy and exactly what I don't want to continue to do. And so I've been doing a lot of work along the way to shift my mindset in this pregnancy, to allow myself to really enjoy it, to know that my past is my past, my struggles have been my struggles, but this is the moment that I'm living in right now, and this is the moment that I want to experience. I want to be able to fully experience the joy and the gratitude and all of these things. Because at the end of the day, this may end up being my only child. Who knows? Not writing off having any more. You never know. I'd love to have at least one more in my ideal world, but I'm not going to even be attached to that right now. At the present moment, what I would love to do is enjoy this moment. I want to be able to, just like I was talking about in that previous episode, I want to create a life filled with joy regardless of the outcome. Because at the end of the day, if for some reason this pregnancy didn't go as planned and something didn't go well along the way, and perhaps I did experience another loss, at the end of the day, that would be incredibly painful, whether I had quote unquote prepared myself for that or not. If I went into this whole pregnancy with that fear and anxiety that might happen, and then it did, that would feel just as awful as experiencing the joy and gratitude during the pregnancy and then having it not go well at the end of the day. Those would both feel equally awful. The difference is that as I in the second version where I'm experiencing the joy and gratitude along the way, I wouldn't be borrowing the future's pain, if that makes sense. Now, I also am a big believer in visualizing what you want to have happen. So I'm also doing my very best, and I'm not going to say that I've been perfect at this, but I've been doing my very best to picture having a beautiful outcome at the end of this, that I'm going to hold this beautiful baby girl in my arms at the end of the day and be so just happy and joyful about that. And that makes me feel so much better than picturing all the what ifs. Those what ifs can just really drag you down. And I also believe that this baby can feel what I'm feeling, that emotions are energy, and what we're experiencing is passed on into the womb as well. I fully believe that. If you're not on board with that, that's okay. You can have your own beliefs, but I fully believe that, and I want to go through this pregnancy full of joy and love and kindness and gratitude and all of the things that I really want to pass on to this child. So, has that been an easy journey along the way? Definitely not always. This has been a learning curve, and I'm sure will continue to be a learning curve as this pregnancy progresses. But that's really how I've been navigating this time. And to the point where now I truly am feeling very excited about the future and I do actually do some gratitude practice every single day. And of course, I always include this beautiful miracle of a pregnancy in my gratitude practice that I do when I'm going to bed each night. But it's been such a journey. And I truly am so thankful to be where I am today. And I love, by the way, when I get feedback from some of you. I've gotten some beautiful messages and things from those of you who will listen to this podcast, and I so appreciate that. I so enjoy hearing your feedback and how this has helped you along your journey, and hope it will continue to do so. So at the end of the day, what I'm really trying to focus on now is just learning and starting to mentally prepare myself for how I want to raise my little girl and what kind of mother I want to be and how I want my life to look as I'm raising this little one. So what I really want to say as we wrap up this episode is I'd like to first of all just speak directly to the women out there who is listening, who is in the thick of your own fertility journey. Maybe you've experienced a loss of your own. Maybe you've experienced pregnancy after a loss as well. And I just want to reassure you that you are not alone in this journey. Your feelings are valid. So many of us are so similar in the feelings that we have come up, but also that your thought loops and your emotional state and your mental state are all things that are absolutely under your control, that are things that you can shift and change. So especially when it comes to those looping thoughts, because I'm a big believer in the thought creates the feeling creates the behavior that we do, maybe the feeling goes back and creates another thought, and that tends to loop. So sometimes we just need to interrupt that pattern, and that can look like taking some breaths, doing a little bit of short breath work to kind of break up that thought and feeling pattern. Or maybe it's just a simple distracting yourself, completely shifting your focus to something else entirely sometimes is really helpful too. So I hope this has been helpful for you along your journey. If you know somebody who's been on a similar journey, please share this episode as well as some of those recent episodes where I've been sharing all about my fertility journey and some of the shifts that I've made along the way. I hope that that's helpful for you as well, but please feel free to share this with a friend. And if this episode has really resonated with you in some way or another, definitely let me know. Find me on Instagram at aligned.to.rise and let me know what your thoughts are. I would so love to hear from you and connect with you. I love talking to real human beings out there. So I can't wait to connect with you soon. In the meantime, have the most wonderful day. Much love to you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Aligned to Rise. If this episode spoke to you, take a moment to share it with a friend who needs this message too. And then don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'll see you next time, my friend. Let's rise together.